Hey everyone, welcome to Massachusetts Sports Central. This is our NFL Power Rankings after Week 11 action of the NFL season. Just to remind everyone what these Power Rankings are, this list represents how likely we think that each team will win Super Bowl 52. It is not an ordered list of the best teams necessarily. It also isn't a random list based on who beat who last week. So basically, this list is less reactionary than many of these types of Power Rankings. Anyway, as I've been saying the last several weeks, the very bottom is, fairly easy to peg within a slot or two, and the same thing about the top five or so as well. Outside of that, you have a lot of similar quality teams where you can slip really any one of them, like five slots either way, and make a fairly legitimate argument for it. All right, well, anyway, let's get to the rankings. Number 32, stick and put, is the winless Cleveland Browns. Just not much to say here. They're terrible. They haven't won a game until they, do something. They're not going to be moving from here. They're competitive here or there, but they haven't been able to finish a game and actually win one. So they ain't moving anywhere. Number 31, even on the bye, they're going to fall one slot again. The San Francisco 49ers, since they are the only one-win team now. Because at number 30, we have the previous number 31, the New York Football Giants, who are moving up a slot as a two-win team now because they beat the Chiefs last week. Good for them. They played well enough. They were not particularly impressive. The Chiefs just played really bad for the most part. Not taking anything away from the Giants, but I think that shows as much that the Chiefs are definitely having some problems right now, then the Giants have found some magic potion and are going to be great the rest of the year or something. Number 29, not moving, the Chicago Bears. They lost again. They're one of the handful of 3-win teams. They're not really going anywhere. Their division is fairly tough. They have 3 teams that are a bit ahead of them, so they really have no shot at the playoffs. Not shocking there at this point, but they're pretty much dead in the water. Number 28, also not moving, the Indianapolis Colts. Again, they haven't been impressing anybody. They're not playing very well. 3-win team. Even in the AFC, which is a bit more top heavy and fairly mediocre in a very big middle, the Colts really have no chance of making the playoffs. Number 27, moving down 3 slots after getting destroyed once again, the Denver Broncos, 3-7, looking in not an impressive 3-7. Last place in the division. They have been playing very poorly lately. They just lost to the Bengals, burning me in my picks. They are just not doing anything right now. They can't even beat bad teams. I mean, it's one thing to lose and lose fairly badly to New England. It's another thing to lose to the Bengals. So, if they can't even beat those teams, they're not going anywhere. Number 26, another team not going anywhere, the Miami Dolphins. They have been bad, and they continue to be bad. They are just not playing well. Their offense has been terrible. And the defense cannot compensate for it. Getting shut out again, they get shut out a lot. It's pretty pathetic, and I don't see that changing going and playing in New England this week. So, I guess crazy things have happened this season, but I don't expect this to be one of them. And that will pretty much salt away any chance that they have at the division. Well, they really have no chance at the division, but any silly hopes that people might have will be gone, and that will put them a little bit farther behind in the playoff race. The thing is, they're still in the playoff race because that 6th seed in the AFC is just being manned by 500 teams, and the Dolphins aren't that far below 500. They have games against these other teams. Those other teams aren't playing particularly great either. That 6th seed in the AFC could easily be an 8-8. I think it's going to be a 9-7 team, but it could be an 8-8 team. So there's pretty much half the more than half the conference is still alive for that last playoff spot. So that's not even including the 4 leading divisions and the Currently, I think it's the Titans are the fifth seeds, at above 500. So it's wide open, but I don't think the Dolphins are going to be a player in it. All right, number 25, falling 3 slots, the Arizona Cardinals. They're just a bad team right now. They've pulled out some wins here. They actually thought they had a chance. Their last couple of losses, but they are just not playing well, and they're going nowhere. The only thing they have going for them is they're in the same division as the 49ers, so they're not going to finish last. I mean, that's pretty much what there's no way they're catching the Seahawks or the Rams. And the NFC playoff picture is a lot more competitive with some decent teams like vying for. There's going to be probably at least the first team and probably the first 2 or 3 teams like out of the playoffs in the NFC are probably going to be better than the 6th seed in the AFC. So a mediocre NFC team is much worse than a mediocre AFC team for the most part. All right, number 24, the Tampa Bay Bucks moving up 2 slots. They won again, but they beat a crappy Miami team. So, at the way Miami lost that game, like it was tied, and then they gave up 10 points in like 5 seconds or something. Good for the Bucks to be able to do that, but that's like I said, I think that shows the level of competition that they were playing against, as opposed to against them like being awesome. In that situation. All right, number 23, the Cincinnati Bengals moving up 4 slots. They beat the Broncos. Good for them. But now they're a 4-win team, and the 4-win team is put you right in the fringes of making the playoffs in the AFC. So that moves them up, and basically they moved up, and the Broncos moved down because of that. Because 3 wins, you probably not have no shot at the playoffs. 4 wins, you're in the mix. It seems like that's close enough, but we're getting late enough in the season that makes a difference. Number 22, the Houston Texans moving up 3 slots. Again, bad team's probably not going anywhere. Moving up a couple of slots because they won. Didn't actually expect them to win that game, so good for them. I don't know if that's going to be indicative of how they're going to go the rest of the way, but they made a move and did something. The defense is still solid. They still have some weapons on offense. It's just all jointed right now, and they have so many holes that's just hard to see them legitimately competing. And also, I can't see them catching either the Jags or the Titans at this point, being a couple games behind, and both of those teams having super easy schedules. Texas schedule is not hard either, but it's harder than the other 2 teams. So I just don't see that happening. All right, number 21, staying put, the New York Jets. They were on the bye this week, so they didn't win or lose. Again, they're a 4-win team, so they are actually in the mix for the playoffs. I don't see them going anywhere. They have quite a few tough games left. They might pull out 1 or 2 more, but I don't think they're going to do any more than that. But as I've said many times in these power rankings, gotta give them some props for not rolling over and dying, believing the whole worst team ever, terrible roster, possible 0-16 type thing. They've obviously far exceeded those expectations, and like I said, I think they could potentially pull off 1 or 2 more games at some point during the rest of the season, which is far and away better than anybody was giving them credit for to start the season, even if it is still going to be a bad, well below 500 top 6 or 7 picks in the draft type last place bad, but that's still better than what people were expecting. So good for them for putting in the effort and not just giving up. All right, number 20, the Green Bay Packers falling down 4 slots. So I was thinking that from the week before that Packers team would show up a little bit more. They did not. They did nothing. They got shut out. They got killed. They had no offense. Like I said, I never expected them to be good, but I thought that they might at least be able to put up the kind of performance they did against the Bears and kind of have that team, which is not going to be, they're not going to beat the good teams on their schedule, like like the Steelers and stuff like that, but thought that they could be competitive with the Ravens. But it was one thing to lose, but they lost so bad. I think that the it's one of those things, like any team can play a little bit better or a little bit worse here or there, But I think that game kind of showed that this is just not a good team. And every once in a while, maybe they can play a little bit better and pull off a game here or there, but they're not going anywhere this season. Even if Rodgers comes back, they've been hearing some rumblings that he might come back. I think the earliest he can come back is week 15, maybe 16. So they could already be out of the playoffs before he even comes back. This isn't like in 2013 where 8-7-1 won the division. The Vikings aren't going anywhere, and you probably need to be a 10-win team to get that 6 seed wild card spot. So I don't think the Green Bay Packers are going to be anywhere close to that, even if Rodgers can come back for 2 or 3 games at the end. All right, number 19 falling 2 slots, the Oakland Raiders. Here's one of those situations where I said everybody's so jumbled up. I would have loved to move them down a bit farther the way they got killed. But, they got killed by really good teams. So that's better than some of the teams behind them that lost badly to teams that aren't very good. They are definitely, if it wasn't for the weakness of the middle of the AFC right now, they would probably be hopefully they would be out of the playoff picture more or less in the NFC. In the AFC, they're getting there, but they're still one of those 4-win kicking around. If they can put a few games together and all the other teams just keep beating up on each other, they have a chance, but I don't put it as a good chance. Number 18, stick and put, the Washington Redskins. That was pretty tough the way they lost to the Saints. If they had won that game, they definitely would have moved up a bit because obviously there would have been another win. Their record would look a lot better, and they would have beaten one of the better teams in the league. Not moving them. It couldn't move them up with another loss, and the fact that they are definitely starting to getting to the point where they might be out of the playoff picture. But they did lose a close game to a really good team at least, so given how bad the teams behind them are, I wasn't going to move them down anymore. All right, number 17, the LA Chargers up 6. The way they played against the Bills, that was ridiculous. Now, the Bills just screwed everything up. Like, why they put Peterman in there, God only knows. But the Chargers took full advantage of that. I mean, Peterman made like friggin' Tom Savage look like he was Tom Brady. So the defense was good, the offense was good. I mean, they put up like 54 points. I mean, it was insane. At 4-6, they're not good, but they're on the upswing. They're the only team in the AFC West that's actually like moving in the right direction right now. They've been playing pretty well. They've won a couple of games in a row. Even when they lost to New England, they played okay. Had a couple of good plays there, big plays, and the game was reasonably close, especially given how New England's played the last couple of weeks after that. So they could make a little bit of a run here and be in the playoffs. I have a little more confidence in them than these other 4-win teams in the AFC that we've talked about up to this point. So we'll see what happens. Tough game against the Cowboys. I could see this one going either way. I did pick the Cowboys in it. If the Chargers win this, it's a big one for either of them. Actually, let's just move on. Moving down 3 slots, the Dallas Cowboys. So we'll just finish up that thought. Their season could be on the line in this Thanksgiving game against the Chargers. They're 500 right now, which is okay. But the NFC, like I said, you're probably going to need 10 wins. So if they lose this game, they're going to be 5-6, which means they basically have to win out, which is does not seem like a likely scenario for them. The Chargers, meanwhile, if they would also be 5-6, but then all of a sudden they look like a strong playoff contender. So that's the difference between the last seed in the AFC versus the NFC this year. I don't know. The Cowboys definitely have a big uphill battle right now, and I don't think they're going to win that battle, frankly. But they're still a decent team. They're on the fringe. Like I said, they'll move down a lot if they lose a game. Will only move up a little bit if they win it. So that's kind of the definition of a must win. Like, doesn't necessarily mean you're gonna be like a favorite or anything like that. But if you lose it, then all of a sudden you are an also ran. And like I said, I can't see them doing much if they don't win this game. But I actually think they're going to. I'm picking them. I could go either way. I think it's going to be close, but I think that they will probably edge out the Chargers in the end. All right. Number 15, staying put. So this is one of those crazy ones. They give up like 50 plus points, and I'm keeping the Bills in the same slot because they're 5-5, and right now I believe the Ravens are ahead of them based on the tiebreaker. But right now they're tied. Their record-wise, they're tied for the last playoff spot in the AFC still, even with the loss that week and the terrible general performance they've had over the past several weeks. It seems like they got their heads out of their asses and they're going to play Tyrod instead of Peterman. I don't know what they were thinking. I mean, I don't think even the people who thought they were crazy for benching Tyrod for Peterman thought the Peterman would be as bad as he was. I mean, the man threw 5 interceptions in one half. Here's a fun fact. So Tyrod has only thrown 3 interceptions in 9 starts, and now another half on top of that. And of the past 2 full seasons, he's thrown 6 picks in each of them. Peterman threw 5 in the first half. That's crazy. Now, I mean, I don't think anybody's crazy enough to think Tyrod is like an elite quarterback, but he ain't bad. Peterman was just friggin' bad, and there was really no reason to think he was going to be anything good. Like, I don't think anybody would have necessarily expected him to be that bad, but frankly, people should have expected him to be probably closer to that than, like, noticeably better than Tyrod. So that was a dumbass move, and the fact that the Chargers killed them so bad, even with 5 turnovers, I think that it was just the Chargers day, and they probably would have lost either way. So I don't, if it was a close game and he had like a ton of turnovers, if they had only lost, say they lost by 2 touchdowns, which is still like a significant loss, but you could be like, well, they had 5 turnovers, including a pick 6. So I mean, that one like directly resulted into points. Interestingly, if you look at the highlights, that was actually the only one that you could kind of blame the receivers because it got tipped and bounced up in the air and the guy caught it. All the other ones, he basically just threw it to the other guys. So he had 4 terrible interceptions and 1 somewhat unlucky one. Anyway, moving on. Number 14, the Baltimore Ravens at moving up 5 slots to number 14. So like I said, I believe that they are actually the 6th seed right now, even though they have the same record as the Bills. They played very well. They shut out the Packers. The Packers clearly are not a good team, and especially on offense right now. But, a shutout's a shutout. It's still an NFL team. They're still trying to score. And they beat them fairly soundly. It's also not like they beat them 3-0 or 6-0 or something like that. I said in some other, I think in the results for last week game picks, I'm going to say this. The Ravens seem to have shown who they are now. Like, we're far enough into the season. They have a good defense that can absolutely destroy and shut down bad offenses. That's why they have like multiple shutouts this year. However, they're just overall, especially their offense is not very good, and the defense, as good as it is, will give up points to better teams. So while they certainly have found a way to just absolutely knock out the bottom end defense or offenses in the league, overall they're not going to beat many good teams. So, but in this year that's going to be good enough to be right in the playoff picture in the AFC. So if they can win and dominate their games against the bad teams, and if even if they don't win any of the ones against decent and good teams, maybe if they can pull out 1 or 2 other games here or there that like they seem like they maybe should lose, then they have a good chance of making it. The Bills have a tough schedule compared to the Ravens, so I think that the Ravens are more likely of the 2 teams with the same record right now. They're the most likely to pull it off. I actually think like maybe at this moment in time, the Chargers might be a better team, but they have a little bit more to overcome. So, like I said, that's more important in the these rankings. Like I said, if it's who's going to win the Super Bowl, Chargers might be a better bet if they get into the playoffs, but the Ravens are a better bet to get into the playoffs at the moment. So that's why you got to be in it to win it. So All right, moving on. Number 13, moving down 3 slots, the Tennessee Titans. They lost pretty bad to the Steelers. Steelers are clearly a better team. They are still solidly in the um, number 5 slot right now, and they still are very competitive in the divisions, and they have a very easy schedule. So I expect them to make the playoffs. Seeing how they play the next several weeks will determine if I think that they actually are going to have any chance of getting past the wild card round. But right now, even though I have them technically, 13 would be out of the playoffs. They that just has to do with the strength of the teams ahead of them. Mostly, you have an extra NFC team thrown in there. Anyway, so number 12, moving up 2 slots, the Detroit Lions. Not an impressive win against the Bears, but it was still a win. Moving up a couple of slots. Frankly, they are right at the cusp of making the playoffs. They're right in that mix. They are above 500. They're one of those 6-4 teams. So it's going to come down to how they play out the end of the stretch here. But they could certainly do it. Big game with Minnesota. I think Minnesota's going to win. But if the Lions can pull up that upset, they actually would have a decent shot at the division. They would get a little bit closer, and they would have beaten the Vikings twice. So they don't have to finish ahead. They just have to tie them. Now, if they lose, then all of a sudden that tiebreaker goes away, and they're another game behind. So I think Minnesota could lock up the division there if they can win it. But like I said, the Lions are actually back in it if they can pull off that upset. And certainly would be in pretty good overall playoff position to get a wild card. All right, number 11, falling down 3 slots, the Seattle Seahawks. Tough loss to Atlanta, but at this point, a loss is a loss when you're in the battling for that last playoff spot. It certainly hurts them in their quest to catch the Rams, even though the Rams lost as well. So they gave up an opportunity to get back in the division right there. But with that loss to Atlanta, now they're 6-4. They're actually out of the playoffs because the Falcons now have that tiebreaker over them with the same record. So like I said, that's pretty competitive. That last playoff spot is pretty competitive. I see I still see the Seahawks as being right in it at the end, just because they are a good team and have the experience. But they can't afford to blow many more of these games. They could have won that game. They could have won that Redskins game a couple of weeks ago. Those kind of losses could come back to haunt them. The last week or two of the season if they are on the cusp of making the playoffs, but need some help. All right, number 10, Kansas City Chiefs falling down 3 slots. They lost to the Giants, and they only scored 9 points. It's I don't know what to say about them. I mean, they obviously started off great. I thought they were going to be frankly, I think this is where I had them in the preseason power rankings, around 10, maybe like 11. I had them as a playoff team though. And I still think they're going to be, mostly again because the AFC overall is pretty mediocre and their division stinks for the most part. So even losing like 4 of their last 5, they are still leading the division by a couple of games. They are. I would say that their chance at a bye is pretty much gone, and they're most likely seeding at this point. I would say is probably 4th. But I'd say it's going to be hard for them to miss the playoffs just because there's just not enough teams to step up and take it away from them. But I don't expect, unless they can regain some of their early season magic, I think that they have one and done written all over them. All right, number 9, moving up 2 slots, the Jacksonville Jaguars. So they did win. I'm still just not sold on the Jags, but they are in first place. They have a good record and they have a super easy schedule. So I don't see how they could possibly miss the playoffs. And unless the Titans win all of their winnable games and then take the Week 17 game against the Jaguars, I think they almost definitely get the division. But I can't see, even if like the Titans like do everything they need to do, I don't think the Jaguars could possibly play bad enough to miss the playoffs. So they're in, and that defense is good enough that gives them a chance to win every week. It's it's just freaking Bortles. Bortles is just not good. He's played good at times, but he's played like Bortles at times too. So you don't know which one of them is going to show up. If the competent Bortles shows up with that defense, they could do some damage. If normal Bortles shows up and the defense isn't dominating a team because they're playing good teams, then they could easily fall in their first playoff game. So. It's the inconsistency that worries me the most with that team. All right, number 8, moving up 4 slots, the Atlanta Falcons. So they have been, even though that wasn't a dominating win against Seattle, they still won. They won at Seattle, where that's hard to do. And they've won a few in a row now, and have looked pretty good doing it for the most part. They maybe have finally kind of found themselves. And if they can play pretty strong the rest of the way, I could definitely see them making a strong playoff run. I have much more confidence in them than any of the other teams right around, except for the Seahawks, right around them for that last playoff spot. But since they have the tiebreaker over the Seahawks, I don't know if the Seahawks can finish a game above them. So, say Atlanta finish. So right now they're 6-4. If they finish 10-6, I don't see the Seahawks going 11-5. So I think that head-to-head loss for the Seahawks could really come back to bite them in the ass come the last week of the season if they end up tied with a team like the Falcons. All right, number 7, just ahead of them in the standings, and the number 5 seed in the NFC, the Carolina Panthers, moving up 2 slots. I still don't love the Panthers, but I mean they're 7-3. You can't deny that. I still think, frankly, that if they play to their abilities, the Falcons could potentially overtake them in the division, but I don't see them missing the playoffs. Unless they completely fall apart. But like I said, the NFC is pretty competitive, so that's possible. But I think that they got that, and I do think that they are probably going to hold off the Falcons and end up as the number 5 seed, first wild card. That's really the Falcons. The only team I see could do it. I could be wrong, but I don't think they play head-to-head against any of the other major contenders for the wild card spot. So they do play the Falcons again. That's why if the Falcons pull off a win against them, I could see them overtaking them. If Carolina wins that game, then smooth sailing, no chance of that happening. It's only because of the potential head-to-head matchup and them only being one game separated in the standings that I don't have a lot of confidence that they'll hold on. They'll hold on against any other team, though. All right, number 6, moving down 3 slots, the LA Rams. They didn't play that bad against the Vikings, but it certainly showed that they're not infallible. And I still, obviously I didn't move them down out of the playoffs. I have now put them at the bottom of the what I would say elite NFC teams, because I don't put the Panthers, Falcons, Seahawks in that company right now. So they're still leading the division, especially because the Seahawks blew their game. They have a lot of tough games coming up, so we're gonna see where they come out. But I wasn't totally distraught with that performance, because the Vikings are a really good team and they didn't roll over and die. They looked good their first drive. They had that other drive where they fumbled right as the guy was going to go into the end zone, so they easily could have had another touchdown there, and that could have changed how the rest of the game played out. But overall, I thought they didn't play badly in that game. Really, if anything, it made me really believe in the Vikings a lot more, as we'll see in a couple minutes. All right, number 5, the New Orleans Saints staying put. So they won. That's the biggest thing, and they actually they showed a lot of grit with a big comeback late in the game against the Redskins. Does you don't want to fall behind that way, but it did show that they never say die, kept fighting, and were able to pull it off in the end. So I'll give them that credit. That's not enough to move them up, but it's enough to keep them from moving down, especially with the Rams losing that game. All right, number 4, also staying put, the Pittsburgh Steelers. They were really strong, and I almost moved them up, but I ended up keeping them in the same place. But they destroyed the Titans. If they play like that, they can beat anybody. So, scary for the AFC and the league in general if they're starting to put it together now, like, getting right towards the end of the season. If they start clicking like that every week, watch out, everybody. All right, number 3, moving up 3 slots, the Minnesota Vikings. So only because they beat a much better team, in my opinion, in the Rams than the Steelers did. And they did win pretty convincingly, even though I just talked a while about how I thought the Rams, put up a decent fight and stuff. But I think that's actually just kind of sort of the point here, is the Rams didn't play that poorly. They had, that one bad turnover where they should have gotten another touchdown, but instead lost the ball. But other than that, like, the Vikings just outplayed them, even though the Rams weren't playing badly. So that was impressive. They put up good points on offense. They were able to stop one of the best offenses in the Rams. So they also, the Lions won too, but they barely beat the Bears, where the Vikings blew out the Rams. So that was more impressive, and that's keeping them, a couple games up in the standings. I also am just kind of assuming that they're going to beat on Thanksgiving, that they're going to beat the Lions. If they do, then they're solidified. They pretty much have locked up the division if they do that. Now, if they lose, they're going to fall a bit here because, well, I guess it depends on what all the other teams do, I guess, actually. But they could fall several slots again if they lose to the Lions. Well, the Lions would certainly move up a couple of, but I don't see that happening. Like I said, this is definitely where you could have some jockeying, especially because you have some of these good teams playing each other a few more times. Like, the Rams and Saints are going to be playing. So obviously, the winner of that one's going to be ahead of the other one. But if they, again, one of them plays so much better and the Vikings don't play as well, they could leapfrog again. Who knows? Excuse me, need a little drink there. Okay, number 2, also staying put, the New England Patriots destroyed the Raiders this week. It was 33-8. I mean, the Raiders obviously have been disappointing this year, but I mean, that was a total ass. I mean, frankly, it wasn't as close as that score would indicate because the couple of drives stalled and they got field goals instead of touchdowns. The 8 points they gave up was after the Raiders were down 30-0 in the fourth quarter. So, obviously at that point you're trying to run out the clock more, not playing as hard, just to try to secure a shutout. And so with the recent collapse of all the other AFC East teams, which I think 3 in a row by the Bills that they've lost, 2 or 3 in a row by the Dolphins, the Jets have lost a couple. What looked like a competitive division. Can you believe when the Patriots were on their bye in week 9? I think it was week 9. If the Bills had won that week, they would have been tied for first place. Now they're like 3 games out. So the division is starting to be pretty much a given, especially because 5 of their last 6 are against the division opponent. So, that's the opportunity for those teams to get back in it, but it's also the opportunity for the Pats to basically just eliminate all of them in quick succession. And, you kind of assume that's what's going to happen. But yeah, they have 2 games against the Bills, 2 games against the Dolphins, first one this week, and they finish against the Jets. So the only game that they have that's not against the AFC East is that game in Pittsburgh in a couple of weeks. That is probably going to be for the number 1 seed in the AFC, and that's honestly for both teams, it's the only game on their schedule that either one should lose. So between those 2 teams, with 12 games left, they should probably go at 11-1 because they have to play each other. So I kind of think the number one seed is going to be whoever wins that game, and will very likely be 14-2, with the other team being 13-3 in the second seed. And so that's kind of pretty much the only big thing to watch for in the AFC the rest of the way. I mean, there's obviously going to be other things. Like I said, the Titans Jaguars on week 17 could be for the division, so that could be something interesting to watch. But you don't know that at this point. You know that this Steelers Patriots game is going to be big, even if it doesn't turn out to be quite as big as I'm pumping it up to be. It's a big game, so that's one to watch out for. I think the Pats are going to take it, and I don't see them really falling out of the second. If they win that game, they're not falling out of the second slot. And they could potentially move up depending on what the number one Philadelphia Eagles do from here on out. So they won another ass whooping this week, and they more or less effectively eliminated the Cowboys from division contention, and made their job for a wild card a lot tougher as well. The Eagles are cruising. The only reason I wouldn't say that they have the number one seed locked up is that those other the Rams took a step back, so I don't think that they have a chance at the top seed anymore. But the Vikings and Saints are only one game behind them at this point. So the Eagles still have to keep winning in order to secure that seed. And frankly, there's a not ridiculous chance that they could even fall as far as the 3 seed if they lose 2 games from here on out. 13-3 very well couldn't. It depends on the tiebreakers to some extent, because I don't think that both those other teams can go 14-2 at this point. But you never know. So, but the top of the NFC is pretty competitive. That's the only reason I think that they have a chance of falling off to any extent, but I don't see it happening. I think they're going to be the number one seed. Certainly can't see them missing a bye, with them basically playing bad enough, and both the Vikings and Saints playing well enough to overtake them. So it's not like they're showing flaws. It's not like you have reason to think they're going to falter at this point. If you look at the schedule, it's just like, there's no team they shouldn't beat. So it's like, it's hard to pull off like, oh, well, they could lose here, here, and here. It's just, you just can't do that. There's not enough teams in the league that are good enough to where you can be like, oh, they're probably going to lose this game. So they're number one. At the moment I see them and the Patriots heading for a collision course in the Super Bowl, with, like I said, only the Steelers I could see changing the AFC side of that equation. Vikings, Saints, Rams, even some of the wild card teams potentially could do something in the NFC, which again, kind of talking myself into thinking I should have moved the Eagles down, just because they're going to have a tougher road to get to the Super Bowl, where the Patriots only have to overcome the Steelers. The Eagles actually have the Vikings, the Saints, the Rams, the Panthers, the Falcons, and/or Seahawks. They have a couple other good teams that could potentially beat them without it being crazy. Where I think if anybody other than the Steelers beat the Patriots, that would be crazy. All right. Anyway, thanks for watching, and please like, comment, and share the videos, and subscribe to our channel. You can also follow us on other social media. Facebook and Twitter are both @MA Sports Central. Thanks, and we will see you soon.